guys! Welcome to the second video in my series on writing diversely. Today I hope to talk to you about some things you should keep in mind when writing characters of a different race than yourself. Most of my tips are going to rely on things I know or have experienced personally, but I've tried to make them general enough to be universal. First off, please let me say that I don't speak for all Black people. I really shouldn't have to say that, but I feel like I really need to. Here's the simplest tip. It's kind of weird to describe brown characters' skin colors with terms like coffee or caramel and so on. That would be like if I described pale skin as like butter or coffee creamer or milk that had been left out too long and slightly discolored. Okay, wow. That was a really gross and creepy example, but I think you get my point. The only time any character should describe another with food terms is if they are a cannibal. Next, don't include people of color as props for your main character. It's really obvious and a bit unnerving if the only diverse characters in your story are your white main character's best friends in an otherwise large and expansive world. It's even more frustrating if said diverse character dies to further your main character's story, even if they are conveniently replaced with another brown friend. That doesn't mean diverse characters can't die, but it's important to consider the implication of minorities dying for a white character's growth, even and especially if your story claims not to have the same oppressions as our real world. It's really important to be aware of racist implications, even if you're writing a science fiction or fantasy novel with characters with blue, green, or gray skin. Just because the colors don't match doesn't mean the same issues fade away. A character of color is still a character. They deserve to be treated and developed as well as any other character you'd write about. If you're writing about a brutal world or an oppressed society, someplace on the brink of war, it's fine if everyone is treated terribly. You're not going to get accused of racism if your POC are treated just as bad as everyone else. It's when your characters of color are consistently the ones treated worse than anyone else that you'll start to have issues. Racial oppression is steeped in so many different intersections, it's really difficult to dissect in fiction. The last thing you want to do is play the White Savior Trope, which is exactly what it sounds like, implying that people of color don't have the tools, education, or strength necessary to save themselves is never cool. I really don't want to tell anyone what to write or say that you can't write the story of your heart, but it's important to consider if the story you are trying to tell is built around an experience that isn't yours to tell. Stories involving slavery, segregation, internment camps, they're very hard to get right. I'm not trying to make you feel guilty for things your ancestors did, but understand that the consequences of these things are not over. I can trace my mother's genealogy back to the Revolutionary War, but my father's records are much harder to know. I know his last name matches the plantation, but even recent information is damaged by families pulled apart or records not given as much care as my other relatives are. Racism even feeds into a diverse author's ability or opportunities to write. As you know, when I was homeless last year, my biggest fear wasn't living on the streets, but that doing so might erase me from the publishing landscape. Every day I face my computer with deep anxiety that I'm not educated enough to write as well as my peers, and I'm so neurotic about money that I feel guilty for buying myself anything. I'm obsessive about learning about writing and investing in my career because I'm terrified that I don't have enough to make it work. These worries are likely familiar to most writers, but for me they are deeply entrenched in ways I've been let down before. Stories that deal with the consequences of racial oppression head-on are almost always going to be more accurate and genuine from voices that have lived these experiences. That doesn't mean you shouldn't write characters of color. Please don't be afraid to do so. Just because some topics are better suited for others to tell does not mean that your stories don't deserve a diverse world. The easiest way to do that is to populate your world. There's no reason a side character can't be a person of color. All you have to do is give them a relevant name and/or identifying features, as long as your diverse throwaway characters aren't just maids and janitors and convenience store clerks and so on. That's a really quick way to make your world more inclusive. But one-liner characters shouldn't be your only diverse characters. Just as it's important to make sure minor characters aren't falling into stereotypical or offensive career roles, it's also important to be cautious of stereotypes when developing larger characters. No one is perfect. It's okay to make mistakes, but it's important to look for, catch, and fix these mistakes as soon as possible. No one wants harmful representation on bookstore shelves, no matter the intentions. I know all of this advice can seem overwhelming, but I swear it gets easier with practice. We've all internalized some prejudices, and even I do my best to be careful and attentive. It's a process to unlearn and improve upon past mistakes, but I found it not only makes us better people, but better writers too. You don't have to pretend that racist ideas don't exist. You just need to address them in text. For example, in Harry Potter, the Death Eaters often talk about muggles or muggle-born wizards as if they are lesser. If they said things like this and no one reacted or contradicted the statement on the page, that would be very, very bad. However, consistently, from the first book to the last, most characters are visibly and instantly disgusted by such a mindset, and often immediately respond in rebuttal. It's important to understand that what your characters say and do is the clearest example of what your story condones as acceptable to readers. If you go hundreds and hundreds of pages before ever critically examining harmful language or behavior, that could be taken to mean that some levels of intolerance are okay. Especially if you're writing for children and young adults, it's important to realize the influence your words can have on developing minds. I'm not saying you need to purify your work or become a paragon of virtue and positive intent. I'm not saying a lot of things here. I don't have nearly enough time to cover all the things you should consider when writing outside of your own experience, but I know even a little can help. I'm definitely open to doing more videos on this subject if you'd like. Please let me know in the comments if you like this video and what you're still curious about. I can't promise to answer all questions or know the right answer to everything, but more than anything, I'd like to help others, so I'll do my best. If you really like this video and haven't subscribed already, please do so. Thank you so much for watching. I'll see you really soon.